Alex from Comic Book Histories with Bruce Hershenson, known for movie collectibles as well as publishing comics, especially with Steve Ditko. Bruce, tell us about your relationship with Steve Ditko, meeting him and publishing Mr. A comics and whatnot.
A friend of mine, Joe Brancatelli, published a magazine called Mr. A. He did it because he met Steve Ditko and they agreed to do it. And it didn't sell very well. And Joe said to me, are you interested in doing something with him? And I had already started the EC reprints, so I had a connection to publish actual comics in color. He said, I'll give you his number and you can call him up and see if you can make something happen. And I called him up and he had an office on like 43rd or 44th Street in Manhattan, right off Times Square. And I went there and the door said Steve Ditko and I knocked on it and he answered it. And it was like seeing an old Peter Parker. The first thing he said, which I guess he said to everyone at that time, I can only talk for a couple of minutes. And so then I started talking to him and he could see that I was serious. And I told him how much I loved the question and, his non-Spider-Man stuff. And we ended up talking like 3 hours, which why it was funny that he only had a few minutes. And then we made a deal and I just said, I'll print them and any profits will split and I'll put up all the costs. And, you provide the art, but then I'll give you the art back and it's your art. I'm claiming no rights to anything. And so we did, the first one was called The Avenging World. And a lot of people think it's a really important early, independent publication. And then we did 2 more, but I just couldn't sell enough. I had the same problem with EC reprints. So after the 3rd issue, I just had to stop. And maybe I met with him like 5-6 times. And each time, though, he talked for hours. And why it was such a big thing to me is because I was in college and I hated it. And he was like, if you hate it, quit. And I'm like, but my parents want me to graduate. It's a big deal. And he's like, who are you living for, you or your parents? And so I feel like he really changed my life drastically just by, especially because I knew he had just walked away from Spider-Man, didn't care, it meant nothing to him.
When you talked to him all those times, what would you say was predominant things on his mind?
Well, we talked more like about philosophy because I had read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged and, he, of course, liked them and we talked about stuff like that. But the 2 things that seemed like of interest to comic book people is one was, I didn't want to ask him about Spider-Man because he made it real clear he didn't want to talk about it. But I said, on the pre-hero Marvels, I said, how come when I look at them, it's not just the art, like the ones that are drawn by you versus the ones drawn by Kirby. How come I can tell by the story which one it is? And yet they all say written by Stan Lee. And I said, so what was Stan Lee's input there? And he said, Stan Lee would say, do a rock monster story, called like Rock, and do a tree monster story called, Gree, and he said that was about it. And, so that said a lot to me that, maybe he had a lot more of the, involvement in the writing of those stories. And because his stories are very distinctive and I love the bunch. But the other thing that happened was after I had published the first one, the people from the Creation Convention came to me and they said, can you get him to appear at our show? And we'll pay him $500 to be there for an hour and answer questions. And it was only a few blocks away. And I said, I know he's going to say no, but I'll ask him. And so I asked him and he said, what would the first question be? And I said, it would be about Spider-Man. And he said, what would the second question be? I said, it would be about Spider-Man. He said, I'm not interested.
When you talked to him about philosophy, do you feel like he was more on his own personal quest for inner growth and that trumped characters that he worked on?
I guess to a degree, but like, I loved Mr. A and the question, and they're basically all the same character, and it seems like he loved the message that he could translate, but that he was looking to do storytelling while he was, giving his message. I had heard the stories about Stanton and him sharing an office and that they had helped each other on their art.
Eric Stanton.
I was there in his office, but I wouldn't ask him because it was like the fetish art and everything. I didn't want to say anything. But so we were there talking, and then there's a knock at the door, and it was Stanton. And Steve Ditko said, hey, Bruce, let me introduce you to my old friend. And they obviously were good friends, and and they talked for a little bit, and he was bringing him something or picking up something. So, clearly they had a big connection,
Oh, what year was that? Do you recall?
72.
Oh, that's great. So they still stayed friends after he moved out of the studio.
Yeah, for sure. It was 100% clear because I think he was completely unexpected. I think he just knocked at the door and he probably knew Ditko never left because he didn't, as far as I know.
That's really great. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.